I'd like to call this Prince William County School Board meeting to order. This meeting of the Prince William County School Board is conducted electronically under the authority granted by the Virginia Code 2.2370882A3 and authority granted by the General Assembly on April 2, 2020 through Amendment 28 to House Bill 29, which permits the school board to meet electronically during the pendency of the current state of emergency for the purpose of addressing the impact of the pandemic on the operation of Prince William County schools and for transacting such business as is statutory required or necessary to continue operations of the Prince William County Public Schools and the discharge of its lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. Next, a motion is in order for the approval of the closed session agenda. Ms. Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the Prince William County School Board approve the closed session agenda as recommended.
Do I have a second? Ms. Zargarpur seconds. Any discussion? I don't see the screen. Seeing no discussion, please vote. Ms. Ralston, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Ralston votes aye, yes. Ms. Jessie, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Jessie votes yes. Ms. Jackson, how do you vote?
Yes.
That's Ms. Jackson votes yes, Ms. Jessie votes yes, Ms. Ralston votes yes, and I just voted yes. Okay, motion passed. Next, a motion is in order. Ms. Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that pursuant to Virginia Code 2.237-3711, the Prince William County School Board enter closed session for the following reasons. 1, to discuss with staff and division council approval of the contract for concessions building at Woodbridge Senior High School involving the investment of public funds, where competition or bargaining is involved, where if made public initially, the financial interest of the school board would be adversely affected, and which matter requires the provision of legal advice under Virginia Code 2.2-3711A 6 and 8, and 2, to consult with division counsel and legal counsel regarding actual litigation and related legal matters regarding a specific student and actual and anticipated litigation involving the school board and Prince William County Public Schools, which matters require the provision of legal advice under VA Code 2.2-3711A 7 and 8, and 3, to consult with division and legal counsel and staff regarding specific legal matters relating to the return to learning and return to work plans as they relate to the provision of educational services to special education students, most vulnerable English language learners, and students with interrupted learning, which matters require provision of legal advice under VA Code 2.2-3711A 7, 8, and 19.
Do we have a second? Ms. Wall seconds. Any discussion? As seeing no discussion, please vote. Ms. Jessie, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Jessie votes yes. Ms. Jackson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson votes yes. Ms. Ralston, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Ralston votes yes. So the motion passes. At this point, the Prince William County School Board will now enter closed session and return in open session in approximately 1 hour. So the Prince William County School Board is now returning to open session from closed session. We do have one closed session action item. We're going to wait for the upload from Ms. B. Simpson. Okay. So everyone refresh their computers, F5, and I'll do the roll call with the folks at home. And then I'll have Ms. Williams offer the motion. Yeah, you're good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the Prince William County School Board approve the issuance of a contract to the lowest responsive bidder, Hammerhead Construction, Inc., in the amount of $2,175,000 for the construction of concession building at Woodbridge Senior High School.
Do I have a second for that motion? Okay, I'll take the second from Ms. Wall. There's a second on that motion. Any discussion? As seeing no discussion or seeing any at home, please vote. Ms. Jessie, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Jessie votes yes. Ms. Ralston, how do you vote? Ms. Ralston? This is on the closed session action item on building the concession stand for Woodbridge. How do you vote on that?
No.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
you're voting yes on that, right?
Yes.
Yes, and this is the closed session action item to build the, to award the contract for, okay, good. All right, excellent. And then we'll go to Ms. Jackson. How do you vote? Okay, Ms.
Voted
Jackson
yes.
voted yes from home with board docs. That's excellent. Thank you. And then Jason, just for my sake, can I make sure I'm seeing on my screen? I don't know if there's a way to see all the board members. So if they happen to raise their hands at home, I can see them. At some point I had that before, or somebody, or Lucky. Okay, we're moving on. Next, does that motion pass? That motion passes unanimously. We will move now on to the closed session certification of motions in order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3712, the closed session of the Prince William County School Board meeting of August 19, 2020 be certified by adopting the following resolution. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Prince William County School Board hereby certifies that, to the best of each member's knowledge, 1, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification resolution applies, and 2, only such public business matters that were identified in the motion convening the closed session meeting were heard and discussed or considered by the school board.
Do I have a second? Ms. Zargarpur seconds. Any discussion? Please vote. Ms. Jessie, how do you vote? Okay, Ms. Jessie votes yes. Ms. Ralston, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes, Ms. Ralston votes yes. 8 yes, unanimous. Thank you. Next, we will move on to where are we at here? So actually, I would like to call the meeting of the Prince William County School Board to order. I will read this again. This meeting of the Prince William County School Board is conducted electronically under the authority granted by the Virginia Code 2.23708.2A3 and the authority granted by the General Assembly on April 22, 2020 through Amendment 28 to House Bill 29, which permits the school board to meet electronically during the pendency of the current state of emergency for the purpose of addressing the impact of the pandemic on the operation of Prince William County Public Schools and for transacting such business as is statutorily required or necessary to continue operations of the Prince William County Public Schools and discharge of its lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. We're going to move on to 9.01, which is an update from Division Superintendent Dr. Stephen Waltz on the implementation of the Return to Learning and the Return to Work plans focused on the provision of services to special education students, the most vulnerable English language learners, and students with interrupted learning. This item is on for information action. A number of the board members have asked to have this meeting this week. This was a special meeting that we called and that we wanted to hear from our administration on our efforts and progress towards implementing our return specifically for our special education and English learner students. And then I think, do we have to read this recommendation? I don't think we read it. No, there's no motion. I don't think we need to do that. I'll turn it over to Dr. Waltz. Did you want to have some opening remarks on this? If you can unmute, sir. Happens to everybody.
Yeah. Good evening, Dr. Lateef and members of the board. I just want to check for understanding before I launch in, just to make sure that I'm on the right track. So my understanding of this special meeting is to get a preliminary update of the progress that we're making. So as you may recall, I had asked for a meeting, the meeting to be on the 26th, because it's sort of like the construction that goes on in the summer. It's like every day is a week worth of progress. And so we can do this update, and I will do my best to answer some of the questions and concerns that have been presented. Division Counsel Mary McGowan received the information from our school board members. And what I was asked to do was to speak briefly about each of the items. And then on a certain day, we had a hard stop and we can answer more questions at a different time. I was also asked to, as I said, be not brief, but be succinct and not to produce slides or have lengthy presentations. So Dr. Lateef, I just want to check to make sure I'm on target. And again, with the focus on our most vulnerable special needs and EL students.
Yes, exactly, Dr. Waltz. That was the spirit of the reason for having this meeting.
Okay, very good. So before I launch into those things, I would like to just take a couple minutes to recognize what I think is at the heart and soul of many, many people. And that is concern about safety and also fear. We haven't lived through something like this. You turn the news on every day and it's just, it's scary and it scares people. It scares staff. It scares some of our students. I can tell you as a husband and a dad, I'm almost obsessed with these safety protocols. So I know that the virus can live on plastic for 3 days. So all the groceries are put in a certain place for 3 days in the plastic bags. I know that it can live on paper or cardboard for 1 day. So all the mail has a specific spot in the red wagon for 24 hours. And I drive my wife, Kathleen, who's a school division employee in Fairfax, and our daughter, who's going to be a senior this year. I drive them crazy with my compulsive, obsessive concern around whether you're following the safety protocols and keeping social distance and discouraging them all the time from even leaving the house. So, even when you're the leader of the school division, you're still a person at heart. And so I do recognize these concerns. I want to tell you that I have a tremendous faith and confidence in our school division and our school division employees. And I can assure you that they have been working 24/7 around the clock to get ready for this opening. I want to thank the school board for giving us the additional 2 weeks to prepare, because especially with the topic tonight, IEPs being one thing, safety protocols, distribution of PPE, and the list goes on and on. This was tremendously helpful for you to give us this additional time. So thank you. So the first thing on my list is an overall status report on the implementation of the Return to Learning Plan for special education and ESOL vulnerable students. And also the desire to have a little bit of an explanation of who are these students that we're bringing back in person, how are they identified, and just how many people is that? So to give you a context of our school division, we have over 91,000 students. And of those 91,000 plus students, we have the following groups that we're taking a very close look at. First, in special needs, students who spend 50% or more of their school day in a special education setting. These students usually require significant specialized support from a special education teacher. We also consider other students who may not be a level 2, but have challenges learning in a virtual environment due to their documented disability. And if a level 2 student's parent does not want them to attend school, we'll consider home-based instruction or other ways to meet their needs. So let's talk about the vulnerable EL students. So as a division, we will consider the most vulnerable of our EL students. Therefore, each school team, we have a team at each school, will consider the following groups. Those EL students who are dually identified students. They are both English learners and they have an IEP. And the IEP process is utilized on a student by student, family by family basis. The second group, students with interrupted formal education. We identify students with 3 years or more of interrupted formal schooling at the time they register in our county. And while I'm on that topic, I just want to do a shout out to our Global Welcome Centers who have processed a lot of students over the course of the summer. And again, most of that is in person, and that's a huge process, and they've done a phenomenal job of welcoming new families. And then the third group of EL students, schools look at level 1 students, again, who have challenges effectively being served in a dual environment. And those school teams should consider things like their access test results and also other academic and behavioral support plans. So that might be a 504 plan. It might be a BIP, which is a behavioral intervention plan, to name a couple of those things. So that's how we classify, or that's what we are using as our benchmark for vulnerable students. So again, we have been working very hard to identify who those students are. And, you know, in this kind of a situation, people want answers yesterday. And so something else that I was asked to explain is just a little bit about how does this whole process work? So to get to A, you have to do certain things in order to move to B, to C, and so forth. So I'm going to talk about that by more of a backwards planning design. So we have been in the process of identifying those vulnerable students. And then once they are identified, we need to contact those families and find out their thinking on in-person versus virtual. So that's another piece that we have to do. If they have an IEP, we need to work to get that IEP completed over this 3-week time period. And once we figure out which kids are coming back and in which schools and which grades and so forth, then it becomes a staffing matter. Do we have the staff ready, willing, and able to teach these students across our great school division? Once we ascertain that, and if anybody might need to be moved around and so forth, additional training that may be required, then we take the student list and the family list, and that goes to transportation. And then transportation needs a 2-week time block in order to effectively plan the routes for the in-person pickup of students in the morning and delivering them back. So because this meeting was scheduled today, we contacted all the principals. We asked them to accelerate their identification of vulnerable learners. And again, please don't hold me to these exact numbers, but out of our 91,000+ students, as I mentioned, it was the board's desire and mine as well to bring back the most vulnerable of our students. And it looks like that's going to be approximately 1,894 students as of about 3:30 today. So, you know, that may change a little bit, but we don't believe that there's going to be a huge flux in that number. So of those, we have 1,162 special education students. We have 361 dually identified students that are both English learners and special education students with an IEP. And then 371 other EL learners that are in that identified group, one of the groups that I mentioned. So again, it looks like about 1,894 students that will be doing the in-person learning. We have I have personally spent, along with staff, many hours talking to people directly who are working on this big restart project. Just to give you a couple of examples, this week we did a Zoom conference. I heard from every single high school principal on the status of their specific school. Today, our entire staff met with the directors. We met and listened to each and every director this afternoon over a period of almost 2 hours, and giving us an update of each and everything that is going on in their area and in terms of any special needs that they have. Tomorrow, I will be meeting with all of our middle school principals, and so we continue. Also this morning, I met with all the Region 4 superintendents, so that's all of Northern Virginia, to hear what they're doing and their plans of action and so forth. So again, I think I mentioned right up front, certainly safety and security, the delivery of PPE. And again, I know that's not on the agenda, but it's related to some of what our teachers will need when they're out in those buildings. And I have a very, very high level of confidence that we are going to be able to do this well beginning on September 8th, especially after hearing from so many individual leaders within our school division. I've also received countless emails, and again, I'm very optimistic. So our preliminary analysis as of late this afternoon with Human Resources is that we are going to be able to appropriately staff for these students. And again, you hear what goes on in neighboring districts on a daily basis. We know that Fauquier was prepared to open the day before they closed because they had staffing issues. With this number of students and our staff, we are confident that we will not go down that same road, that we will be able to open on the 8th. In fact, I've heard from numerous teachers who have been back. They're excited about it. They want to see the kids. They know the kids are depending upon us. They know we need to help them. And so we're moving forward. That's impact on staff. Again, I covered how that timeline works. That was another issue on the list. We talked about the safety factors in closed session. We've talked about personnel needed for implementation. And then the next item is consistent approach at every school. And I'm happy to address that as well. So what I think sometimes can cause confusion is we have a system that utilizes site-based management, and people have a lot of different opinions about what that means and the consistency of how things roll out. So for example, you may be aware of a school in your area that has a real focus on STEAM, and they've taken some of their staffing dollars and they have a STEAM lab, while a different school may decide to use some of their resources in another way. And that's part of the creativity that can happen when teachers and parents and administrators, support staff work together to provide sometimes unique things for an individual school. When we're talking about something as serious as health, safety, virtual and in-person education, site-based management works a little bit differently than that. So for example, we have a school division return to learning plan. We have a school division return to work plan and a school division health plan. The expectation is that every school will adhere to the central division district plan. And so as we distribute PPE, as we have set up ways, if you need something at a building that has to do with health, safety, and PPE, you can make one phone call to one person, you will get immediate assistance. All of those protocols have been put into place. So there's not site-based decision-making when it comes to things like social distancing, wearing masks in the hallways, how we are going to go about making sure that we have done the IEPs. Those things are all division-wide with a set of expectations and various monitoring that is put into place. Next bullet is some concerns from teachers. And one of those is equity expectations for general education and special education teachers. Well, I was a teacher myself. I taught for over a decade. I taught in an urban district that didn't have anywhere close to the resources we enjoy here, but I'm glad I had that opportunity. And I will just say in that setting, I had to do a lot more than teachers do in our setting because we didn't have all the specialized teachers. When I taught, I never heard of a math resource teacher. I never heard of a teacher. There were no teaching assistants in my school. There was no reading specialist. I was the reading specialist in my classroom. And so we have the luxury of having a lot more support. But, you know, in those days, you know, when you had to do so much yourself and now those things have evolved, there's always been sort of a yin and a yang of what people do and who has the most hours and maybe who has greater responsibility. But I will tell you that I believe our extraordinary staff in Prince William County Public Schools are going to be giving it their all every single day, 7 days a week. And I know, having heard from many of them, they've already been working very, very hard over the summer. Many hundreds and hundreds taking part in robust professional learning opportunities to improve their virtual instruction. We've had an army of teachers who have worked to create the platforms that the lessons that are going to be put on our Canvas platforms. They've been working with each other, and there's a lot of excitement out there. So I have a lot of confidence that everybody's going to be working their hardest and doing their best. And so I think those expectations that we put on ourselves as educators are powerful, and everybody will be doing a yeoman's job. So the curriculum requirements, we know that in the state of Virginia, we have the standards of learning. We have a state curriculum, and that is complemented by curricular additions in our own school division. And we know that those are required, again, to be taught across every school. So this is not a site-based kind of decision. We have to make sure that we're providing the Virginia standards of learning by content area to all of our students, regardless of the delivery. Virtual versus in-person requirements. So I think I've talked a little bit about that. And if you look at our return to work plan, the CDC, OSHA has identified employees that might be exempt from the in-person. We have been working tirelessly all summer long in HR to work with those specific cases. And if there is someone that, for whatever, it meets the criteria that they can't do in person, then we're working to make sure that they're doing the virtual. Next item is program consistency. And again, I don't want to be redundant. And again, I was asked to have a brief presentation on these things. So that was listed again on site-based versus consistent implementation. And again, I just want to give you another example. We have schedules that are going to be consistent across the school division. Much like our bell schedules and bus pickup schedules, there's sometimes a few minutes difference, but we have the same expectation for the amount of learning time from school to school and level to level. The question was asked, how is vulnerable being defined? And I did that right off the top because I knew a lot of people were curious about how many students we're actually talking about bringing back. And on that same topic, I want to say this. You know, when you have something like this that goes on, an international pandemic that no one, well, I guess there's a handful of people that were through one almost 100 years ago. But for the average, you know, the vast majority of people who haven't been through that, and you're creating these systems and you're doing things for the very first time, we're going to do everything we can to do them right and to do the very, very best job with every one of these concerns and the program implementation and the logistics of all that we are doing. So I have a lot of confidence in people and the work that they are doing. And I have been personally informed, as I said, with hours and hours of virtual feedback just this week. I wanted to make a comment about PPE. And again, I just, a couple of things that have to do tangentially to the students that we'd be bringing back. One thing that I thought might be a source of comfort to the board and to our community and to parents is that because we're starting with a small number, which I think, again, I think that was a great decision on the part of the board to start with the most vulnerable students. We know those kids need us the most. It's a small number. It gives us an opportunity to learn what managing in this kind of a pandemic is going to be like. So we will probably make some mistakes, but we will be able to learn in a much more controlled way with many fewer students in the school than the plan we originally talked about, which was the 50-50 or even that 25% plan. So again, something that was brought up earlier that I think will be a comfort, we're going to have 2 adults on every bus. So there is going to be assistance with that. And without going into a whole lot of detail, the planning that every one of these offices and departments is going through is amazing. And so much of this is being captured in very short videos. Some of those are already out, and there's many more that are going to be shared with the community, with students, and with staff over the next few days. But just something as simple as, you know, we have the seats marked on the bus where they can sit. We will be loading from the back of the bus first. We will be unloading from the front of the bus when we arrive. There will be 2 people on the bus, so that was a concern. Regarding PPE, concerns with students, let's say it might be a special needs student, and sometimes even students have to be diapered, and we have Hoyer lifts, and that is concerning to people. So what do they have that we're going to provide to ensure their safety? They're going to have face shields, N95 respirators, full-length gowns, gloves. Some of our special needs teachers, and God bless them. And my wife was a special education teacher for many years before she went into administration. So, man, if you don't think I've had a marriage full of stories and, testimonials about the great qualities of our special needs teachers, trust me, I've had a lifetime of it educationally and in my own home. But the honest truth is sometimes we have some biters. And so we even have Kevlar sheaths, which Kevlar is the same thing that bulletproof vests are made. And there's a sheath that actually fits on your arm. So if a teacher does have to get close to a student to do something like the diapering or suctioning or something like that, all of those things are going to be available, and they're all going to be provided at our expense. We've heard that many of our staff members have their own face coverings and prefer to wear those coverings. So we're going to let them do that, and the students as well. However, we will have plenty on hand on buses. They're already delivered to I don't know if they're at every building, but I know the delivery started several days ago. So there's already some buildings that have received supplies of items like the facial coverings and masks. So if a student doesn't have one and it's time to get on the bus, they're going to be handed one right then and there at no cost. Same with at school if they're a walker. And the same with any staff member. If they need a mask, we're going to provide a mask, and we're going to have them available then. So I believe, so that ends all that I was asked to present. There was one other item on there that I actually wanted to have a couple of staff members weigh in on. And That was the feasibility and logistics of IEPs, timely written, training of teachers, additional training requirements for teachers. So I've asked Denise Hebner and Rita Goss, those are both associate superintendents. Denise Hebner supervises support services, OSMAP, special education, and she is also the pandemic lead for the Prince William County Public Schools. And Rita Goss is over all of our curriculum and instruction. So I want to give them each a brief opportunity to address that last bullet on the sheet that board members presented for my response. So Ms. Hebner, we'll start with you, please. And again, many thanks to you, Rita, my entire staff for all the work that you have done. It's you're amazing. And you give me a great sense of confidence in being able to do this.
Thank you, Dr. Waltz. Good evening, Dr. Lateef, school board members, Dr. Waltz. I'm happy to be here to talk about the great things that we're making happen and the possibility that's ahead of us. We recognize that the task of completing IEPs in the division is one that seems enormous when you talk to the number, that there are 12,000 IEPs. And we are really working to help our schools streamline that process, recognizing that a lot of the information that we have from our previous IEPs can be reused, and updating the IEPs with language so that we're sure that our children's needs are being met individually in this new time of learning. We're very, very grateful that we've had the extra 15 days to complete the IEPs. We recognize that our caseloads vary from some of our teachers that are coming in have 8 IEPs that will need to be written. Some will have 10, others will have a higher caseload up to 24. Our speech and language pathologists have a higher load in that the average caseload is a 50% of those are the case manager of. So we recognize that it is a task that seems daunting, but we have successfully so far in the division have many schools that have IEPs well underway. We have the support from our student services and our social workers and our Office of Special Education ready to assist school teams as needed. And we feel that we can complete the task. We recognize that it is something that may be a challenge, but we are ready and prepared to serve all students regardless of the status of their IEP. I think that's an important thing to note. We also have provided training in a lot of different areas from our return. I'm hearing that the concerns from teachers as far as safety. We have evaluated our situations in the classrooms on how we can help keep our children safe and our teachers safe. We have the proper protective equipment. Training will occur on that equipment. In addition to specialized training through our Office of Special Education, we've had cluster meetings, support sessions, and we'll continue to do so until the start of school to make sure that all of our teachers are supported effectively. I can speak also just in training in general for our return to school, our health plan, our return to work plan. We've met with our administrators to go over the requirements about our health plan and how we can keep our children safe and our employees safe as we return to work. And I'm very, very confident. Canvas training has been in place for both our special educators as part of their school base. We've also provided Canvas training for some of our specialists and support staff. So I'm very confident in our ability to successfully start the school year.
So good evening, Dr. Lateef, school board members, and Dr. Waltz. It's my pleasure to talk about the professional learning that's been happening all summer to support all of our educators in being prepared for the first day of school in serving our students both virtually and in person. Clearly, we have redesigned and reimagined how we will be educating our students this year. And so an enormous piece of that preparation has been the development of the professional learning and how we have implemented that over the course of the summer. As Ms. Hebner was saying, we've trained really thousands of teachers and leaders now on our Canvas learning management system. We've spent a great deal of time really focusing on those elements of instruction that remain really important in order to ensure that all of our students can fully access the learning. For example, we have had over 600 teachers of L students participate in co-teaching training. that would be, how to co-plan and how to work together in order to support students in a virtual setting. We've had participants, we've talked about with participants participating in professional learning around how do we really authentically provide that L support, English learner support in a remote setting. We've looked at literacy components in the virtual setting. We've continued to examine leadership as we move through this time. We've looked at access testing and how will our continued assessment of students take place. Over the course of the summer, those welcome back to school in a virtual setting has been one of those pieces. The last 2 days we've had our content days for teachers. In the division, we have a little over 6,360 teachers total. And over the last 2 days, 6,269 of those teachers have participated in those content sessions where they have learned from the content supervisor and other really teachers in the field about how to utilize Canvas and those Canvas modules that Dr. Waltz referred to earlier that have been built over the course of the summer. So this professional learning is ongoing. We have a number of required sessions that we have put out to teachers that they will be expected to take. And that includes not only the technology pieces, but also really those best practices for virtual learning, but also the cultural responsive instruction sessions are ongoing required professional learning for English learner programs and services. So those pieces are still moving forward. So our professional learning is on track. Our teachers have been eagerly participating and providing feedback. And I would say the overwhelming feedback today after folks were able to meet with their content supervisors was extremely positive, that they really were able to breathe a sigh of relief and realize really what was being offered to them as support and what's already been built out in Canvas. Because the staff in student learning and English learner services, they have really worked all summer along with folks from Denise's team in special education to ensure that we have really done a heavy lift for teachers in building out those modules that those teachers will now have access to. In addition, we are in a consortium in partnership with Virtual Virginia, and the content for kindergarten through 8 is available to all teachers in the Commons. And so those teachers who are looking to provide accommodations to students or looking for content that would be able to provide those supports and scaffolds to students, they certainly have that available and are already have access to that. We are confident that when we open on September 8th, that our teachers will be prepared and that we have the supports, services, and resources in place for us to successfully educate our students, both in person and in the virtual settings.
Thank you, Ms. Goss. Thank you, Dr. Waltz. Any further comments, Dr. Waltz? Thank you, Ms. Huebner, as well. Unmute, Dr. Waltz. Jason, can you show us the screen of everybody so we can kind of see if anyone's raising their hand?
Yes, thank you so much, Chairman Lateef, for the opportunity.
So we'll just go around and I'll go with members who have a question first, if you want to raise your hand or signal me. Ms. Zargapur is up first.
Good evening. Dr. Waltz, I had a quick question about if you could quickly talk about for our staff or our families who live in an area where the internet isn't so great. They either have poor satellite service or they don't have access to broadband. What are our options for those families and staff, because we do have both, so that they can continue distance learning as well?
Well, if we could get Matt Guilfoyle present, I'll start off while he's joining the meeting. But I will say that we are expanding the parking lot Wi-Fi's, but we're going beyond that. We are even establishing partnerships through Spark with organizations that want to try to get hotspots and other devices that will assist with this or actual pay for getting people the internet service in their home. And this work continues to expand, but I'll let Mr. Guilfoyle, our Associate for Communications and Technology, give you just a little bit more information.
Yes, thanks, Dr. Waltz. Good evening. So yes, we have recently received the numbers of families that have indicated that they need support with the internet access, and our schools are continuing to do outreach to try to reach every single family. That includes through a multitude of significant effort to reach every single family. It includes calling them. We've had some folks that are visiting homes. So we are really trying to reach every single family to find out what their needs are from a technology accessibility issue. So when it comes to the internet, there's really two different types of issues with access. So there's access, which you might think of in terms of somebody who lives in a rural area who may not have Comcast wires running through their area. The other issue is affordability. So those are two separate issues. And sometimes you may also have access and affordability as an issue. So we have identified approximately 10% of our families, students actually, that require support when it comes to internet access or affordability. We are working on a number of solutions on those as we speak. And I think we had planned next week to do a more comprehensive briefing on this type of information. So we're literally sort of, as Dr. Waltz said, we're building the plane as we fly it here, but we are prepared to hopefully come up with some centralized solutions in the very near term that will be able to help our schools meet those needs as rapidly as we can. And so that will be a combination of things like helping our families with Comcast Cares, which provides a low-cost internet solution. And some schools are sponsoring students already and families through that program. And the other would be utilizing MiFi's, as they call them, essentially a take-home hotspot for somebody who has cellular access but doesn't have broadband in their area. The other piece of that would be there are going to be families we know that have neither cellular nor broadband. And in those cases, we are working with our schools to provide Wi-Fi parking lots. We've had them now established at every single high school and middle school, and we're bringing more elementary schools online as we speak. Some of our principals are working on providing something like an internet cafe, quote unquote, where a family could come in during set hours potentially and use the cafeteria or some other supervised space if they have no other means to which to get to the internet. So we're working rapidly as possible with our schools to identify a slew of solutions to that. And we are, as I mentioned, working that as rapidly as we can.
Thank you. I do have one follow-up question. Some special education parents who have devices were told that they could upgrade or update the devices or that they'll need to, but some of them weren't sure, because they have to be connected to, I think, the school. So should they talk to their school about whether they can sit in the parking lot and do that from there, or what would be your advice on that?
So there might be two different things that come into play there. So one would be if they have a specialized device, I would have to look to Ms. Hebner to help answer that question. But in terms of if they have a school-issued laptop, yes, they can just go to any of those Wi-Fi parking lots, as I mentioned, and they can run those updates in the parking lot. And we're working to make it so those updates don't take as much time. We've heard that it's taking, for some folks, quite a long time, and we're working to streamline that as much as we can to make sure that the software is up to date, that the security on the device is up to date, but that it doesn't take forever when it downloads.
Thank you, Matt. Mr. Wilk had a follow-up question.
Yeah, a follow-up question to that, Mr. Guilfoyle or Dr. Waltz. Are those hotspots in specific high school parking lots or within those buildings, is that coming out of the site-based budget, or is that coming out of a general fund so all schools can have equity and provide that for their families?
So that's coming from IT's central budget that we are funding those and installing those across the school division. We and as I mentioned, we're working to provide those to as many schools as we have the budget at this time to be able to do that.
Okay, Mr. Stevens, can I see the screen as well? Okay, great. Miss Jessie? Miss Jessie, can you unmute?
Yeah. I'm unmuted. Maybe you'll have to come back to me because I have several issues that I want to address. First of all, to parents, I understand your concern. I know you guys are going to say, how long has Lily Jessie been working? But the first couple of years of my employment was in an institution for adults and children who were severely and profoundly handicapped. So I have dealt with all types of situations. I also worked at Muriel Humphrey School, and I worked with kids that you had to hold their hands before, you had to keep them close to you before you provide instruction. So I know what it's like to work with special education type students and their needs, and I know what it's like to be a parent of one. My daughter was in ERA listed, and we were able to get that adjusted. But I spent a lot of time at Ann Ludwig, and I saw kids that really required a great deal of help. Dr. Waltz, I've heard tonight from you how excited people are. Those excited people are not writing me. The people who are writing me are just plain fearful. And I've heard you and Ms. Goss talk about the meetings that you've had with directors, with principals, various people. And my concern is that you have not met with the real people who have real concerns. And so I would ask that before we have the next meeting, that someone goes out and meet with some of these special education students. I was one of the people who drafted up the agenda for tonight and the questions. And the one question that I wanted to talk about is equity of expectation for general ed versus special education students. And there were 4 bullets on there. One was the length of their instructional day. The special education students, teachers, are involved in direct instruction pretty much from 9:30 until 3:30, but I'm told, and you can correct me on this because I do have questions, that their afternoon is specials. So my question is, they have the highest exposure rate. There are some of us right now who are Zooming because we don't want to be exposed. And so I am not going to be one to sign off to expose teachers to something that you can't see. As a principal, you could have a fire drill, you could have an intruder drill, but you cannot have, there's no drill for COVID because the teacher can't see it coming. And she doesn't know she's exposed and she doesn't know she has it. So I'm wondering about the inequities in special ed and general ed. One, they're not, they're longer directly in contact with students. When I looked at the schedule, the gen ed teachers have a 9 to 9:30 or so, I'm not sure exact about these numbers, where they have office hours. But these special education teachers are working with kids when they get off the bus. They are direct instruction for most of the day. Regular ed teachers have 120 from locations that could be outside their homes. They don't even have to be in their homes. Special education teachers must provide daycare for their children. People who are at home can perhaps provide their own daycare. PPE, you talked about that. The IEPs, I don't know, you guys are telling me, because one of the things I put on my question for you, fact versus fiction. I just need to know what's fact and what's fiction. Is someone not giving us the right information where I'm getting all these concerns about these IEPs? The level of social distancing for general ed teachers, there's no problem because they're home. But I've worked with special education kids and the activity level. Sometimes they run. As a principal, I did it, and when I worked in the quote institution, as it was called, I mean, my office could be turned over in a day. You know, I never knew what my students were going to do because they just didn't have controls. The other question I would like you to ask is there such a thing as hazard pay? And piggybacking on the full day, since there seems to be a real problem with us meeting the IDA requirements for virtual versus in-person learning, is there some way you could modify that schedule for special ed teachers where they wouldn't have to be in class all day, since the afternoon, from what I understand, again, you can answer the question, what I understand, in the afternoon, they're getting PE, art, and music. If that's, and it's recorded, can those students get that instruction at home? And can the special ed teachers to reduce their exposure to kids? You know, one of my colleagues said, well, if you're vulnerable, then you could ask to be removed. But teachers are telling me that they're vulnerable. They're not vulnerable. They are vulnerable because possibly of the exposure, being in contact. And secondly, they are vulnerable because they have loved ones at home. So it's a lot that I'm asking you, but I'm just asking, is there some way we can equal the playing field for these special education teachers? And looking at the report that just came in to us, it says that in Marumsco Hills, that district, that the virus is up at 32%. And my district is at 16.48%. So the virus's level has increased. So it's a lot. Hopefully you can answer. And is there such a thing as hazard pay? And if there is hazard pay, can these special education and ESOL teachers get that? And we've got to rest my case. Not all of it. I have a lot. I'm sorry. But I'm just hearing from so many teachers, Dr. Waltz.
So Dr. Waltz, Dr. Waltz, yeah,
Yes.
Dr. Waltz, I think she had the question on hazard pay, which I think is, if you can answer that. And then the other one was the spirit of the fear that you kind of addressed earlier and what she addressed as well. And then I think if there are other questions that might need more time to answer them, you can certainly use that for, next week when we come back here, or answer them to Ms. Jessie by email as well.
I would not like for him to answer by email the equity issue for special education teachers, because I promised them that I would have that addressed.
Okay.
So please do that. Thank
Perfectly
you.
fine. Thank you, Ms. Jessie.
So I'll start off with the hazard pay, and I'll invite Ms. Amy White, Associate Superintendent for Human Resources, to respond to that. I believe they've been in contact with all of our Region 4 or many of our districts. Ms. White?
Thank you, Dr. Waltz. Yes, as late as this afternoon, we surveyed every surrounding school division, including Fairfax, Loudoun, Stafford. We got answers from 12 school divisions, and not one of them are considering hazard pay. All of our teachers are expected to work their 7-hour day, whether it's virtual or in person. And again, that would be a very, very complicated issue with salaried employees. But the answer is no. No one that I am aware of has decided to do that at this time.
Did you receive money in your care package for hazard pay from the state?
No, we did not.
I was told that by someone in Richmond.
No, no. We have not had anything that was directed to be used as hazard pay.
Could you recheck that out for me, Amy?
I sure will. I'm happy to, Mrs. Jessie.
And get back to me. Thank you.
By tomorrow.
Okay, so I guess in closing with that series, we will have someone look, but as Ms. White just said, the teachers are expected to work the same amount of time, but we'll take a look at those schedules and have some information when we meet next week.
Is it possible, would you look at whether or not it's possible for special education teachers to work direct instruction a half day, and since the afternoon is recorded for their specials, and it's recorded so those students could get that at home, is that something that's possible? Would you look into that for me also?
We'll look at the schedules and look at the equity issue.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know we were done. Great. Any other questions, Ms. Jackson? Anybody from home have anything? Ms. Jackson?
Hi, yes, thank you. I had the same concerns that Ms. Jessie just mentioned about the equity in terms of workload. So I'm also curious as to what steps we could take to, think outside the box. I feel like there's a direct correlation between feasibility in terms of workload and whether or not a teacher can implement some of the mitigation safety protocols. So it's the effective, like how the availability, the effectiveness, all of that is related to how much you're working. So my questions stem, I guess, from feasibility, because I'm relying on not only the emails I'm getting, but from the information that I'm getting from administration to determine, if there's anything we need to advocate in as a school board. So I might have more questions as the evening progresses, but when do teachers know or staff learn who is returning to the building on September 8th? And then how many teachers are returning? And then the second question I have is there a way that we are collecting reports from teachers after September 8th of safety concerns so that they can comfortably, with no fear of retribution, alert administration of any possible safety concerns or safety violations? So there's two questions for now, but I might have more.
Sure. So just to get clarification, I know that Division Council collected these new questions for tonight's meeting, but some of these that we're going to need more time on, like those, for example, Chairman Lateef, I was wondering, is that something you want the board members to send to B.
Sure.
Simpson or?
Sure, I think I'll have the board members send them to Division Council, just because we'll keep them with Division Council since many of these border legal issues, and then we'll disperse them. And then whatever you can answer tonight, Dr. Waltz, feel free to answer. If you can't answer and you don't have the information, just let us know. And we know next week is a big meeting.
Sure. So again, we'd be better prepared to answer those two things, Ms. Jackson, next week. But if you could just put those to an email with Mr. McGowan, we'll look into that for you. I also wanted to call on Mr. Iman. When I was talking a little bit about the people that I have met with, the leaders of the school division. Okay. In the school division this week, I certainly didn't mean to imply that we're not listening to teachers. So I've asked Mr. Iman if he would give a bit of an update on that, and then if he wants to call on any other staff members as well. We've had hundreds of teachers involved in this process this summer.
Thank you, Dr. Waltz. Good evening, Chairman Lateef, members of the board. Yes, just very briefly, as you've been informed in the past, there have been a great number of committees put together to help with our return to learning plan, which included large numbers of teachers. So teachers have been involved from the get-go in our planning process. Additionally, in conversation with the PWEA leadership, a couple of virtual forums were established so that teachers could join in and speak directly with staff members. And Ms. Hebner and Ms. Goss and both of their teams participated in those. So there have been ongoing teacher input from the very beginning, and that continues to this date. And so I just wanted to be very clear about that.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Ms. Wall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of questions. I just want to say, first of all, thank you, everybody, for giving us such a great update on where we are with our plan so far. A couple of concerns that I've heard from teachers. One has to do with envisioning the day. What is the day going to look like for our special ed returning teachers? What therapy teaching sessions are going to look like? Could you speak to just, my first question would be, could you speak to the efforts or plans of the division to allay some of those teacher concerns for like, how is this going to happen in a new environment? The second question is related. It's also a concern that I'm hearing from teachers, and that is the concern that children will show, that our special education students who are returning will show up sick. And what are our plans and training for communicating our expectations to our parents specifically to educate them on a new culture of acceptable absenteeism for sickness, and also helping them understand, the things that we're watching for and why, when it's not okay to show up. So those are two concerns I'm hearing for teachers. Just you could speak to some of the plans on those, and if you don't have the specifics now, that's fine, we can do it next week, but I just wanted to raise those two concerns.
Well, sure. Yes. And I can tell you that, again, the teachers are just back this week. So there's a lot of both school-based and professional development that's ongoing in terms of things around envisioning the day. But we'll have a little bit more information for you next week. If you wouldn't mind just sending both of those items to Ms. McGowan. And then next week, we can give you a little bit more specifics on the health plan, because again, there are expectations on the daily screening and also, what mitigation will take place if someone is sick. And we can lay that out for you next week.
Okay, that'll be great. Thank you very much.
Yes.
I'll go to Mr. Wilk and then Ms. Williams.
Dr. Waltz and team, thank you. Dr. Waltz, there was a lot in that presentation that you gave. Overall, I might have missed a couple things, but it exuded confidence, and that is what I think we as a board need to see from your division and your team, administrators, the countless hours that you guys put in. So I want to thank you for that in that presentation at the beginning of this. I do have a couple questions, and again, I may have missed these. But again, you guys can come back with the answers if you don't have them immediately right away. Do we have any idea how many special education teachers indicated on their surveys that they wanted to come back and teach in person?
We can get that information for you.
Okay, thank you.
If you just send Mary McGowan an email, and I'll have Mrs. White be prepared for that next week.
Okay, cool. A couple other, Dr. Lateef, can I go through mine? Okay, just wanted to make sure. Okay, a couple other teacher-related questions. I know you covered a lot of the PPE items that we are purchasing. I apologize if I missed this, but do we have specifics, and maybe Ms. Hebner can add this, that for students who are unable to wear a mask, for students who are spitters or biters, for the higher risk positions, what specific PPE do we have? And again, I apologize if this was covered in that very eloquent, confident speech, but I just wanted to reiterate if we do have specific stuff for those teachers who are. So
they, again, you mentioned biters. So we will have Kevlar sheaths, and they literally fit on your arm, and Kevlar is what's used in a bulletproof vest. And then we will also have the face shields, N95 respirators, full-length gowns and gloves for any teacher that requires that kind of PPE. We know many don't, but we want to make sure that we have those on hand and in schools and paid for centrally. So yes, those will be available. Ms. Hebner, I didn't know if you had anything to add on that.
Sure, Dr. Waltz. Just the question of the mask. We recognize that some of our students with sensory issues may have a difficult time maintaining a face covering. So again, it goes back to the personal preference of face covering. We're hoping that parents would be able to find something, or we can assist in finding something that's comfortable for a child. But if it's not comfortable, we recognize that we need to work to maintain the 6 feet of distance. We also have personal protective barriers, and we're making some modifications in the classroom with dividers and physical barriers to promote safety in those cases. We're going to work to really train our students behaviorally using additional signage that helps people recognize the space that needs to be kept. And so I'm confident that we can mitigate with those strategies, or we'll do our best.
Ms. Williams? Mr. Wilk,
these are probably just yes or no questions from the superintendent in case I missed it, just again to have this information. And Dr. Waltz, if you could post a transcript of your speech, I think that would be really helpful online as well. It was very good. It was very comprehensive and contained a lot of facts and information. So I think that would be
I would be happy to do that. Unfortunately, all I did was look at the bulleted list that Mary sent. All of that came straight out of my head off the top of my...
Full recording of you on YouTube.
Well, yes, they can,
Okay.
that will be available. Yes.
Okay, that's good. So, Dr. Welch, real quick, are our classrooms able to adhere to the safety guidelines set forth by our health officials, including local, state, and federal guidelines? You don't have to go into details, just yes or no, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Are we fully staffed with janitorial employees who are able to clean classes daily?
Yes.
Final question. Have we, as a division or as a special education department, consulted with local daycare facilities in the area to learn about procedures that they've implemented to protect their staff of teachers to contain any type of outbreak? Because, I mean, from my understanding, this has been pretty effective, especially in our community. Have we looked at best practices from these different private businesses or institutions?
I would have to we would have to look into that, or unless one of my staff members can readily answer that.
So I can speak to, we currently work with AlphaVest, and AlphaVest has a company that has facilities and provides childcare throughout the region and nationally as well. And we have discussed some of the things that have been successful. We currently have summer camp on our own that is in progress. We have summer camp through AlphaVest offered at 4 locations. And so just as we did with summer school, we're learning our lessons from childcare. We have talked with Parks and Rec about childcare in a broad way. So we really have looked into that and looked at what has helped children be successful in childcare. One of them they've talked about is training students about wearing masks, helping them approach it from it's a superhero aspect, a lot of the different strategies, but we can always do more. We want to do better. We want to make sure we're prepared.
Okay, and last one going with childcare, and Miss Jessie, maybe you covered it with the hazard pay or something. Have we had any discussion about helping special needs teachers who have to come in person with childcare support? Did that come up, Miss Jessie? I apologize. Or no? Oh, it did not come up. Oh, okay. So yeah, that would be my question.
It did come up, but it was one of the things on my list.
Oh, okay. Apologize. I wondered if you said it already. So yeah, Ms. Huebner or Dr. Waltz or Ms. White, has there been any consideration either with AlphaBest or others in the community for helping our special needs teachers who do have to come in person with childcare support?
Ms. Huebner, do you
Yes.
want to look in that?
So I'm excited to say that as the board has received updates that we've been working with AlphaBest, we were able to finalize our contract, and employees, if they have not already, should be getting the notification in the near future for priority registration for AlphaBest. So we will have childcare available 4 or 5 days a week. And again, our staff members receive a discount on that childcare. And we are partnering in order to help essential workers in our community as well. So we recognize that the child care may be new for some of our employees, and they have the priority and registration for that.
Do we know the discount, or is we don't know that exactly? Oh, okay. I just want to make sure.
I've looked at the contract a million times. I believe it's 20%. The child care is actually very reasonable. I took it and compared it to what the child care is being offered in other situations in other areas. And it's extremely reasonable compared to what other private and other options available in other counties that I won't name.
Okay, yeah, and I think I'm going to just ask that, again, that we follow up with Ms. Jesse's inquiry about hazard pay or some type of additional compensation, because if our in-person special needs teachers have to get childcare, whereas a general ed teacher might not, I feel like we should figure out a way to make it, more than affordable if possible, so we can help support them with their children if they have to go to some type of childcare institution. Okay, those are my questions, Dr. Lateef.
Ms. Williams?
Thank you, Dr. Lateef. Justin, you stole most of the things that I wanted to ask, so that's kind of nice, no repeats. So I guess I want to start with, very quickly, well, I actually want to start with thanking the staff and Dr. Welts for a very comprehensive, I think as comprehensive as you can get, because we are in the middle of a pandemic, and I understand as a society, we have become adapted to insta everything. And I think one of the things that we're not quite doing as well as myself, I'm guilty of that too, is remembering that our dynamic can change in a moment's notice. And it's very hard to sort of disseminate the information clearly and correctly down to every single person involved in that chain where information needs to be disseminated. And it's also sort of sometimes like playing the telephone game, where the person at the top says it's blue, and by the time it gets to the 60th person out, they are like, it is a silver turquoise hue that is the range of blue. And so the spirit of things are still there, but maybe not, the message is not quite as clear as it had started out initially. And I bring that up because the point to saying that is the board made a motion to have a virtual start of special education students in the building. And when we made that motion, most of us felt like that meant something different than what we are seeing occurring right now, not understanding to all of the needs for IEP adjustments, how many students were actually going to be in the building, what impact that would have on teachers and staff. And even as we meet today and discuss this issue, the information is still changing and being updated. As Dr. Waltz said, one of the things I liked about what you said, Dr. Waltz, was you were like, as of this afternoon, we
Yes.
know, because we thought last week as a board, I mean, it's not confidential, that we were talking more around 3,000 students coming in. Now,
Yes.
we know it's somewhere closer to a little over 1,000 students coming in. And from what I understand, Dr. Wells, if you're talking transportation needs a 2-week lead time, there's still 48 hours before that deadline occurs that we may even see less students coming in to buildings. And I don't say that to negate or make it a minor issue. One student in a building is a big deal. So it's important. And I believe a lot of the public is under the impression that there were some of us who wanted school virtually 100% all year long, and some of us who were going to change the decision to this evening. I think there's a lot of things to consider, and there's a lot of discussion that's going on. And I don't want anyone to feel that there's always an expectation that things are going to change from this board, or that we don't care, or that we're not talking or we're not considering things, because I want everybody in the public to understand that we are talking constantly and getting updates from the division. And a lot of us on this board are also parents. Our own students are included in these discussions when we think about the best way to open school. And I don't think anyone has the answer 100% correctly. But we are continuing to work and have these discussions with staff, public health department. Next week, we're getting an update from the health department. They're ongoing. And I think if you have a question, or you have heard something, or you want to know something, I think it's a really good best practice to reach out to the source. And I say that to say, Mr. Guilfoyle, I just heard you a moment ago talk about internet, which I don't think that we can say enough. Could you just agree or disagree that we are partnering with organizations like Comcast to provide, sponsor students in some instances? Some businesses are like Comcast are providing free and low cost internet. And then Mr. Wilk brought up the question, because I think it's worth repeating again with this chain of command thing, that the IT budget is servicing the needs for providing my Wi-Fi, what do you call them? The hotspots, my Wi-Fi spots, to parents who can't afford or can't get, or there is no internet. Could you go through that one more time?
Yes, happy to do that. I think,
Thank you.
and as you stated, I think it's good because I think some of what you said is a little bit different. So I think it's good that we get on the same
See?
page. So
It's only like 2 minutes.
So yes, the Wi-Fi parking lots. So basically, we put on top of the school the ability for an area outside the school to be able to have internet. Those are being placed on those schools, and the placement of those Wi-Fis and the cost of the equipment to do that, those Wi-Fi parking lots, is being covered out of the IT budget. And basically, we've expended all the funds that we have available, and we're making that as putting those in as rapidly as we can. And again, we've covered every high school, middle school, and a number of elementary schools, and we're constantly adding that. And our folks have been working remarkably hours. It's literally 3 guys, and they are climbing up on top of roofs when it's 110 degrees out, and they are doing this work. I mean, they are doing an amazing job. So that is one piece of the puzzle. The other part, as you mentioned, is yes, we at this exact second don't have the funding centrally, but it's something that we're looking at. And so to do that, but schools have been working to cover the Comcast Cares, sponsoring those, as well as those MiFis, those take-home hotspots. That at this time, as of right this minute, are covered by the schools. But it's something that I know we've been having discussions with about how can we maybe look at that as a something that we can work to meet that need centrally. So. As I mentioned, we are literally working those issues by the hour, and so we'll keep the board updated as we solve those problems. We do, and those numbers of students that need internet and need devices is something that we are again also literally by the hour updating, and we're working those issues in real time.
Thank you, Mr.
So
Guilfoyle.
let me, if you don't mind, just a couple of things in reference to getting information and all of that. Remember, you can go to pwcs.edu. We have a rich body of frequently asked questions. There's a lot of great information. You can actually go to and click on our Return to Learn plan, our Return to Work plan, and our health plan. Those are all readily available on the web. And then again, we've started producing all kinds of videos. And those you're going to see more and more of those available. I did get a little more information on the question around the teachers and, teachers leaving and that sort of thing. So we have had fewer than 10 teachers resign. And most of those are centered around people who are concerned about children. And we had one teacher who had a concern about teaching in the virtual environment. But here's a really interesting piece of information. So we've had more stability and retention going into this next year than any year I can remember in the 16 years now that I'm going on. So we usually hire about 800 teachers in the summer, and this year it's about 500. So and one other thing I'd mention is on those numbers. So just to give you a little context, where did the 3,300 come from? So we went to every single school and we asked them to identify those categories using the vulnerable students. And that's where we came up with the 3,300. But then when we started making those personal contacts, and then we looked at our survey data on the families that wanted their kids total virtual. And then, as I said, we started doing the IEP meetings. That number came down. And again, as of late this afternoon, it's 1,894 students.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Guilfoyle. So my next question is for next week, Dr. Waltz, if you could give us an update on what it looks like, not just for the teacher day, but what it would look like in a building for our students, when they return to a building, and for our families at home. I think there's concerns about, do we have to do fire drills, and, how many staff members are required to be in a building? If we have students in the building, what services that they're going to be provided, and as well as, the services that, and you may already have in the works, I'm sure, these things for next week. But, how counseling services work for students who are virtual, and just sort of remind our Prince William County school families that, returning to a building is not, we're not returning in the same sense we were pre-pandemic. Because I think that there's a general, I hear a lot from a lot of families, oh, I want my child in the building because I want them to socialize. And I think socialization looks very different under a pandemic. And I think that's something that we should really address, because I think it can never be stated enough that for me personally, and I feel pretty confident speaking for the rest of the board, that we are all very, very concerned on a regular basis, as well as the staff, I'm sure, and let me know if I'm wrong, for everyone's safety, not just our
Sure.
student safety, but for our staff safety. And we are also very attentive to when we hear emails or phone calls about people being concerned for their safety, and recognize that we don't have every single question answered, but we're doing our best to work that out as information becomes available, making the best decisions that we need to make. And if you could, Dr. Waltz, again, reassure our public, if the board makes a decision and let's say you get it updated with different information or information changes before the board knows, I feel confident, and I hope that you can reassure our school division families that you would come to us as a superintendent and say, because this is not normal circumstances. I think what we did in the past is, most of the time, information is on an even playing field. The board has it, staff has it, we can all make a decision, informed decision together. But I think now, because of the pandemic, sometimes you're getting information before we get information, or vice versa, depending on what it is, right? Because everybody's doing 1,000 meetings all of the time. I've never had more meetings in my life. And I just think that it's important that the public hears that as our superintendent, as the leadership for our school division, if something were to change, you would be sure to notify the board and our Prince William County Schools families that we need to change course, or that there's a pivot coming down the road, as you know. And that it's okay to make changes as necessary, and we will do that as necessary.
So I'll be happy to respond to that right now. So you're absolutely correct. So generally, with the way these things work, it's under completely different circumstances. The decisions that we make, the changes in things are usually much more methodical and over time. But because this is a health, a global pandemic, these things can change on a dime in terms of spread and that sort of thing. But yes, I'm happy to let the whole community know, and certainly the board, that if I felt that something needed to change on a dime, you would definitely hear from me. I mean, this is our school system. We're in this together. We are a team. It's the board, it's the superintendent, the administration, faculty, and staff. And, a lot of us have kids too. My daughter's going to be a senior. So the last thing I would do is try to jeopardize my own child or anyone else's health and safety. Now, there's no guarantees. We are doing everything that we have been advised by the CDC and based on the experience that others have had. I think something that, like I mentioned, the news, that can be terrorizing. I know our daughter can only watch so much of that. I'm a news junkie, so I want to see, the Channel 7 news, and then Lester Holt, and then the late night shows when the rest of the family goes to bed, because I want to see everything I can possibly see. And so when you see things like, oh, these colleges are starting to close down. All right, let's not panic. Let's be thoughtful. Let's figure out why. Every one of them gets traced back to these huge parties that they've been having off campus. And, the medical experts are weighing in on this too. It's like, you can't do that. And then one of the Georgia schools where the girl posted the video, and then I couldn't believe they suspended her for that, but then they revoked the suspension. But you had basically everybody back in school and packed halls with no mask. Okay, I don't want to do that, and I know this school board would never do that. So I have confidence in all of us working together. And rest assured, if something happens on a dime, I will let the school board know, and I will not be at all hesitant to say we need to change course or this school's got to shut down tomorrow, period.
I really appreciate that because one of the things that we hear as board members is that information is not being disseminated. And then Prince William is just a county that's known for when we make a decision, we've been very thorough, we've taken our time, and we don't usually reverse course. So I think it's really important to express that, that we are capable of doing that, we know that we can do that, and that we will do that if necessary. And then what can you say to assure our staff in who are still at various levels, right? Sometimes it's administrators, sometimes it's teachers, sometimes it's TAs going, I'm not getting information. There is no plan. There is no, I have no idea what the safety procedures are, or my principal said this and I heard another principal say that, because there's so much of that going on right now because our emotions are high, we're stressed out.
Sure.
And then, I was just thinking too, like even going to FAQs, like we're just on information overload. So sometimes it's hard to even really digest the information that's being presented to you. What can we say to our staff to sort of reassuring that this information is coming? And if they're not able to digest it, or it's not making sense, or they don't understand it, what's available for them?
Well, I think one thing to keep in mind is the teachers reported back this week. So there's a whole lot that principals do when teachers come back on a normal year. There's all kinds of updates and for everything under the sun, and different initiatives that are going on, changes in the curriculum. There might be textbook modifications, you name it. So on top of all that they have to plan for and digest in any normal year, they have all these other things that are going on, and they're supposed to teach virtually or teach children in person in an environment that's challenging. So I could not agree with you more that people are on overload and it's stressful. But I do believe that with every passing day, that is going to calm down more. I'm not saying it's going to vanish, and I'm not going to say every single person is going to lose that fear, but it's just like all these teachers that went through the training that they went through today, and they had live feedback that they were able to give back through the chats and that sort of thing. And the feedback we got was, wow, a big sense of relief. Okay, we can do this. And again, all these videos that are starting to come out, and I'm going to ask Mr. Guilfoyle to hop back on just for a minute or two and tell us a little bit more about those videos, where they can be accessed, and give them, like when you gave me kind of the ones that are getting ready to roll out, it was like, oh, that is going to be fantastic. Because like you, I have an idea minute also. And when I went to Mr. Guilfoyle a few days ago and I said, hey, look, I think we need to get in there. We need to get into a school. We need to show people these signs. We need to show people the plexiglass that certain kids that can't wear a mask will have on the sides and that sort of thing. And then he tells me about, well, we have several of these produced. We've already released 5. These 6 things are coming out later this week. And I was like, okay, that's amazing. So will you share some of that with everybody, Mr. Guilfoyle, please?
Sure. So, yes, so that's correct. So we've been working all summer. Our media department has been working very closely with Ms. Heavner's staff, Ms. Goss's staff, Mr. Cherokee staff. We've produced around 25 different videos, and they're each very sort of short. They're not more than about 2 minutes, and they cover the gamut of everything from what does it look like when you get on and off a bus. And we had staff use their own children. They volunteered to be the actors in the videos, so it's actually kids getting on and off of school buses with masks. What does it look like at the end of the school day when you're getting ready to go home? How do you take care of a mask? Just for kids to understand, like go home, here's the proper way to wash it according to CDC guidelines. And so we, like everything else, it's about timing. And so we're going to be releasing those soon. We don't want to inundate everybody all at once. So we are going to be rolling those out. And we're trying to make them as timely as possible so that they are relevant. As we all know, sometimes relevance is, you can't always remember something 3 months later. So we want to make sure that it's timely when somebody really needs that information. So we are going to be rolling those out. And again, they do cover the gamut. And I think next week, Dr. Waltz, the plan was to actually show a couple of those
Yes.
to the board. So
Correct.
we'll be able to provide those to you so you can see some examples. And I think the staff has done a nice job with those. The other thing you may have seen is we know people don't always read, either just because they're inundated with things or they don't necessarily have the ability to do that. So we have been moving a lot of our videos. We've been taking a lot of the FAQs and turning them into little videos. So they're like 1 minute long, and we've been posting those on social media and other places. And I know those have been well received. So we're trying to take all that massive mountain of information and turn it into chunks of information that people can digest. But it's a lot. It's a lot for our administrators. It's a lot, honestly, just for the communication staff to keep up with the number of things that are changing. And I think, of course, we're reinventing public education in a very rapid manner. So there are a lot of changes that are happening. And so we're doing our best to make that something that people can digest.
Thank you, Mr. Guilfoyle. And I just kind of want to finish up by saying, if we could get an update, Dr. Waltz, from you next week, because we're right back here 7 days later, on what schools who may not have the budget to provide the My Wi-Fi's or the Wi-Fi hotspot devices to families, because some of the schools have more need than others, and so that's going to take a bigger chunk out of their budgets than other schools. I'm very, very concerned, especially for my district, because every single school just about, except for one, is a Title I school. And there are many, many families that don't have internet now and are really concerned about reaching out to their school or to Comcast to get that information. And then it also in that same vein, how are we communicating to the families who do not have access to Wi-Fi now, all of this information? I know because my son, my youngest, is a student at Featherstone. Featherstone mailed out a letter that said, these are the dates, here's the information. It was one page, it was short and sweet. I can't vouch for any other schools because I only have one kid left in the system that goes to that school. I'm not saying it's, every school is doing the same thing, but I know that that's one method. And if we could just get an update on how we are reaching out to those families that don't have Wi-Fi or internet access or a computer at home right now, that they're able to get this information. What are some examples? Because I know each school is going to probably do something differently. If we could get some information on that, I think that would be great. And I just want to thank everyone again and really appreciate all the time and effort, and just remind everyone that as we can continue to go through this, there's going to be a lot of changes and a lot of updates, and it's really good to just everyone sort of take a breath and give each other some grace and understand that I think the next 3 Wednesdays in a row, or the next 3 weeks in a row at least, this week included, we will be here. So we are committed as a board to continuing to try to service, provide the best service, and staff is too. So it's not for lack of interest or care. We will continue to meet, and we will continue to bring up all of your concerns and be mindful about it. So I just want to say that, and thank you again to Dr. Waltz and your staff.
Mr. Wilk has
Welcome. And Ms. Williams, I know you put a couple of things, sent them in already to Ms. McGowan, but if you wouldn't mind just emailing her those other things so we make sure we get everything. And then if I could just please ask the board to make sure that anything you have for next Wednesday is in by Friday, so we can make sure that we have the time to thoughtfully get the answers and get things prepared and get them into my head. I also wanted to share with you, there was some questions about the child care, and I have an update which I'll share with you. Employees can sign up by August 22nd for AlphaBest full day care that begins September 8th. The Office of Student Services is excited to announce that AlphaBest is offering full day care 6 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. starting September 8th for K-8 students through the Alpha Academy program with preferred registration. So priority goes to PWCS employees. COVID-19 protocols that meet or exceed the CDC and school district guidelines are in place. And those locations are Buckland Mills, Bristow Run, Coles, Dale City, Fannie Fitzgerald, John Jenkins, Potomac View, River Oaks, Tyler, and Yorkshire Elementary School. The Alpha Academy program will facilitate distance learning activities as well as provide enrichment. Those in need of 4 or 5 day care for the first marking period are invited to choose Alpha Academy. Advanced registration for PWCS employees opens tomorrow. At 9 a.m. tomorrow, August 20th, and runs until the 22nd at midnight on this Alpha Best web page. So on the pricing for employees for the 2021 distance learning support and all day care, 4-day care is $110 per week, 5-day is $120, and there's an annual registration fee of $42. And if you have questions, you can email Prince William at alphabest.org, or you can call Debbie at 703-334-1272. That's 703-334-1272.
Thank you, Dr. Waltz. Mr. Wilk?
Dr. Waltz, just for clarity, I think you might have said this, that when you met with all 90-plus principals about the reopening of schools, and again, were there any schools who did not have the staffing available to provide in-person services due to teacher medical conditions?
We can get Ms. White back on for a moment. When I was last briefed on this, again, this was late this afternoon, I think we had one school that might have an issue, but again, we have the latitude in any normal year to transfer staff. So, Ms. White?
You're absolutely correct. We're in close contact with every school. They have all the information by position for everyone on their staff. Right now, we had one school, as Dr. Waltz said, that had, I believe, a team of teachers that were all tier 1. In that case, that means that teacher can work virtually with a teacher assistant in the classroom. And we're also looking for ways to put all our employees who can't do their job virtually because of the nature of their job. We're going to hopefully use them in situations like this to help principals, to help teachers, and to be that extra set of hands. So we are completely comfortable from an HR standpoint that we are ready for the 8th.
And I just want to clarify, I'm in the process of meeting with all the principals. So I've met with all the high school principals. The next round is tomorrow with the middle school principals. I also met with all the directors today. So elementary then will be, is yet to be scheduled, but it's on the docket.
Thank you, Dr. Waltz. Is Ms. Hubner still there?
Yes.
Just ask a question.
Hey, Ms.
Yeah.
Hubner, I have a question. Because we don't get these reports sometimes until later on, and weeks later. Were you in the SEAC meeting last night?
Yes, sir, I was.
Okay, so just a question, because we as a board did receive a letter from the entire committee as SEAC appointed by ourselves supporting the right to keep in-person learning for our students. What were some of the themes of the discussion between the members yesterday, concerns or just overall conversations that we might not be aware of as a board? We get these updates annually from them, but given the timeline and what's happening right now, were there any specific things that stuck out to you that should be addressed to us?
So, Mr. Wilk, there was a variety. Obviously, when you get a citizen comment time, we have everyone who has different opinions and expresses that in very different ways. So we had a range of parents who expressed that they don't feel safe sending their children back to school, but another range of parents who also expressed that they really felt the need for schools to be open and available for service for their children. And I believe that they were going to be sending a letter to the school board today and expressing their beliefs in that. And so I think that in general, it's a very concerned that their children's needs be met and wanting us to be aware that it is our obligation as a school division to do so, and wanting to be sure that the school board made decisions thoughtfully accordingly.
Thank you.
Okay, let me just see the screen from home. I haven't looked back. Ms. Jackson, do you have anything?
I think that my email, I'll just email Dr. Waltz by Friday for additional
Okay.
questions regarding feasibility. I am excited by the fact that you're going to keep us updated and, we'll continue to work as a team and I look forward to more information next week and I will email you. I am generally concerned about the workload, so I'm curious to see how we can work on that. Just look forward to emailing you. Thank you.
Okay, and then I go to Ms. Zargapur, and then can I see the screen again? Thanks.
All right, I'm going to kind of do a bunch of stuff and just throw it out there and we'll get whatever gets answered. So the first thing is our special education parents are going to be waiting with bated breath about who goes back and when and how. And I'm just assuming we can't answer that right here, right now anyway, but that is a concern that they're bringing up. So if you have any words of wisdom, I'd like to hear that. The other thing is, I'm sure the schools will be doing some back-to-school virtual things. I'm taking my glasses off because I'm fogging them. That's great. So I'd just like to know if that's universal. How's back-to-school night going to look? I want to make sure, I know that I talked with Rita Goss about how some of the Canvas videos were going to be translated into different languages. I personally would love to know where those things are housed so I can get them out to different groups that have asked. And then quick shout out to our high school counselors because I know they have a really, really, really complicated job right now. And they are working so hard to make sure that the high school schedules, middle school counselors are working on the same thing. So just want to show you the love there, guys, because I know you all are working really hard. And then the last thing I just want to ask about, because this comes up a lot, with school having been out since March, our student mental health has been a big issue. And a lot of people were hoping we were going to go back on day one. We decided to start off virtually, which, depending on our health data, may have been a much more prudent decision. I never know about that stuff either, but we'll hear about that next week, I'm sure. But with the mental health aspects, is the county going to be doing anything with, I know as a teacher, I'm getting social emotional learning and I'm getting a lot of training on those things myself, so I know our teachers are too, but are we going to be able to offer anything else also for our students in terms of guidance counselors, with their being able to reach out if they need any extra help, that sort of thing? So I think those were all my things, just that's it.
So the answer to that last question is yes, and you don't need to email anything on that because we already have that on next week's docket. But just on those other matters, if you wouldn't mind emailing those questions to Mary, please.
I had Ms. Wall, and then I'll go to Ms. Jessie. Ms. Wall?
Yes, thank you. I had one last question. If a parent or a teacher wanted to know the specifics of what's going to happen, if a COVID case shows up in our schools, and I know you said we'd get more information on this next week, but I just wondered, is this the right document to go to, the Phase 3 health plan for return to new learning? Or is there going to be like a parent-friendly sort of document that will be produced in the future to help parents understand some of the parameters of the specifics of, if one case, 2 cases, 3 cases? I know this will all be health department type guidance, but is this the right document for parents to go to, the health plan?
That's certainly something that anyone can go to, including parents. And certainly any of those questions you can bring when we have the health update, and hopefully Ms. Asher here. Ms. Hebner, did you have anything else you wanted to add? I thought you were wanting to talk.
No, I won't go into great detail because I know that we'll be addressing this next week.
Okay.
But yes, we, in addition to the health phase guidance, we are providing parents with a return to learning packet that should clarify a lot of things for parents in a more simplistic way.
Excellent, thank you.
Great, we'll do Ms. Jessie, and then Ms. Ralston. I didn't see your hand up, but if you have anything, I'll follow after Ms. Jessie. Ms. Jessie?
Yes, I wanted to go back to, again, the main issue for me. I don't know what kind of emails you guys have been getting, but all of my emails have been about concerns about safety. So my number one question is this. We're saying, so Dr. Walsh, you're saying that you feel that special education teachers are going to be as safe as you can possibly make them. That's one. I want to know if that's a yes or no. But
That's a yes based upon the guidance that we're following from the CDC. Yes.
okay. So my question is, what is the communication protocol when COVID becomes evident in a building? Are there, you know what, I always had like a crisis manual, like a 1, 2, 3. If there's a tornado, watch out, send somebody out and wave at the tornado, all that stuff. It was so precise. And I've read other plans in other districts where they have a hotline or something for people to call. How do we assure these special education teachers, who are going to be the only ones who are directly involved in this, that if there is a COVID situation, how is that handled? And is there any thoughts to when is it going to be necessary to close a school? Will it be one incident? Will it be what? Have you guys talked about that in crisis management? I know risk management does everything. So could you address that? And I have one other question.
Yes, we have, we certainly have invested a lot of time on that. And again, we'll be prepared to walk you through all of that next Wednesday.
Okay, because I really do need to know that, and the teachers really need to know that. The other question that I have really kind of comes back to all the emails that I've been receiving, and I've received a lot. And I know these other people have received a lot. And you're like, oh, and to all the teachers that I couldn't respond to, I just could not respond to all the emails.
Right.
I tried, but I could not. But the one question, and maybe this is something where we can't get into the legalities, but I think these special education teachers need to know why we're not really reconsidering when virtual learning is going to take place. And why virtual learning for special ed could not take place for a couple of weeks. In your mind, what's your thinking on it? And what is the IDA requirements in terms of our responsibility as a board? Because I promised them that I would address that, and I think they have a right to kind of know that. So if somebody could answer that without, I know you can't go into all the legal situations, but someone has to answer this for these teachers.
I would defer to legal counsel.
What can she say and not say?
I'm sorry, but in terms of what our obligations are under IDEA, that's really a topic for closed session, which we've already discussed. I can't provide a legal opinion in open session. But, as has been discussed today, we've got guidance from, U.S. Department of Ed, VDOE, that have told us that, schools can reopen. And as Dr. Walsh is saying, my understanding is that the school system has a very robust plan that's following the CDC, OSHA, and other kinds of guidance as to how to operate schools safely in this environment. So I would point to that, not just as a lawyer, but as somebody that works in the system. But I can't really go into the legalities of what IDEA.
I'm not asking you to go into the legalities, but when we wrote IEPs, we gave these parents this huge IDA list of requirements, what their needs, and for those special education teachers, why do in relationship to IDA requirements, why do we feel that this is the best model for us to meet the needs of these kids and provide services in the least restrictive environment? And as I said earlier, and I think Dr. Walsh, you said, we're in territory that we've never been in. We're in territory we've never been in. And a parent wrote to me, one of the parents of one of my kids wrote, do we want to lose amazing teachers because you're forcing them, and we're not forcing them, to choose between their job and their love, and are brilliant at, and our children's benefit from their health or their families. They should not have to choose between teaching my son end their life. And she said, that's ridiculous. And I think we all think that that's ridiculous. But when the IDA does provide us with guidance, and why I think that Ms. Hefner should be able to answer this question without legal, to say, what do you see in this model, virtual model we have, is the in-person model is the best to meet the needs of these kids. So I want you to I want somebody just to have a conversation with special ed teachers who are out there waiting for us to talk to them. Could you talk to them, Mrs. Hebner?
I would be very happy to work with Dr. Roper. We have provided opportunities for all of our teachers to meet with the Office of Special Education through our cluster support teams, but I would certainly be happy to work through that, recognizing that our children have very specific needs and diverse needs, and try to work through that with them.
I'm asking you, could you please just talk to them? I'm listening. I'm a special ed teacher. Because everybody's talking about all this happiness, and I want to say something. The school system has done phenomenal work. So I'm not surprised that everybody came in and every department came in and all the principals. I was out there. Whatever you guys asked me to do, I did. I know they're all saying, we're going to do it. We're going to be ready. And here's a 1, 2, 3 bullet thing. We're going to do it. But I just want you to somehow talk to these teachers to assure them that if there is a problem, somebody's going to be, what's the protocol? What do I do if I'm a special education teacher? And I'm still afraid. What do I do?
So, Ms. Jessie, we recognize that it is a very stressful situation for many of our teachers and our staff to come back into the building, and that there are a lot of questions. And we are really working to provide, in addition to the proper PPE, we're thinking through how we can help our teachers problem solve strategies. We actually have a lot of teachers that are very excited about coming back into the classroom. We recognize that there's a need for additional hands and different personnel to be present to assist in the school buildings. So we continue to work with human resources to determine how we can do that effectively. I think that the number one thing is we have to look at our kids' needs. And even in a virtual environment, there will be necessity to deliver instruction that is beyond a virtual situation. And so I believe we've referenced the home-based IEPs or something that some students that require face-to-face instruction. We know that we have to keep people safe, kids and adults. We have reporting structures, routines, physical barriers, equipment, and we're prepared to do so. I recognize that this is a stressful time for our special educators, and I believe they are some of the hardest working staff members that we have. We all work hard, and right now we're here for them, and we believe that they can do this, and we are there to support the effort.
Well, I just want to say to special education teachers, I've been one of those special people who are not so special. And I know you work in cubby holes, and I know that you're afraid of what's going on. I assure you that not only me, but every member on this board is concerned about your safety and your welfare. So I want you to know that you can contact Dr. Walt's office, you can contact Ms. Hebner's office, but you can contact any member of this board to let them know that I am still feeling fearful, and things are happening in my building that are not happening. I'm here in other buildings that have a safer environment than my building, and maybe there's a special person up there, Mrs. Hebner, you could have as a person, like a hotline for special education teachers. You think you could do something like that?
Ms. Jessie, I, like you, want our teachers to come back and feel safe and our kids to be well and to learn. And if whatever we can do, I can certainly work with Dr. Roper. We have contacts for every school. Every school has a point person that they can contact, and we can coordinate that. We really want our teachers to feel supported, and we're confident that we can do that. But I will definitely look into that. Yeah.
I appreciate that, and they appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jessie. No. Come on. Mr. Wilk.
I just would like to see if the superintendent or Ms. Hubner and the Department of Special Ed could maybe come up with a way of probably offsetting some more child care support, especially for the special needs teachers who come into the building. If that means reallocating funding from other areas that the budget had already done, given the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm saying like possibly tuition reimbursement, things like that, to be creative, to see what other options we have, because I just don't feel, I think Alphabet is doing their best with a 20% discount or whatever we think it is, but if there's a way to further offset that, that would be something I'd be interested in seeing, the creative ways we can reallocate other things in our budget. That's all, no question. Dr. Lateef, I'm done, don't worry.
Ms. Ralston?
Thank you, Justin.
Ms. Ralston?
Oh, okay, thank you. How are we doing with our people who keep our buildings clean and pristine? I had a lady to call me, and she was Hispanic. And so her English wasn't absolute. And she was so worried that because there was no kids in that school, that she would not get a paycheck. So I sent her off to somebody that I thought could be of help. But maybe we need to talk about them sometimes. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Ralston. I think without any, is that your hand, Ms. Jackson? Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just had two questions that I think that could be really easily answered. Is it okay if I go ahead and
Sure.
ask? One is Kevlar. Are they going to all buildings or just specific buildings, the Kevlar gloves? And then could you speak to the safety protocols for bus drivers really quickly? And then that's it.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mr. Wallingford, I think those are available where they're needed, but if you want to respond to that.
Oh, they could.
Thank you, Dr. Waltz. Ms. Jackson, the Kevlar sleeves that Dr. Waltz referred to earlier in his presentation will be delivered to every school and every facility where there are high-risk employees. I believe that is probably almost every school, if not every school.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There was one more question you had asked. Oh, the bus drivers, safety protocol for bus drivers, Dr. Waltz.
So as I said, we are going to have 2 adults on every bus. We are going to have the seats specifically marked where they can sit, so there's appropriate social distancing. If there are 2 children from the same family, that's the only exception to students who can sit together. We will load the buses starting at the back so you don't have all these kids passing back and forth. And when we arrive at the school, they will be offloaded from the front to the back. So again, you prevent the passing back and forth. Bus drivers will have masks available on their bus. So if any child is at the bus stop that does not have a mask, they'll be asked if they need one and immediately given one at no charge. We will do that every day of the school year. We will be doing between every run high spot cleaning. In other words, where the child is sitting, there's a specific wipe down that will happen between runs. And then after the runs are completed, there'll be a complete disinfectant we have a certain machine that will be used to disinfect the entire bus every single day.
I appreciate that. And thank you again for answering my questions.
Ms. Williams?
Thank you. Dr. Waltz, I have a question I just want to pose publicly. You can answer. I don't know it's appropriate to make it public for everyone right this second. But if you could give the board an update of where those special education students are going by district, I think that would be very helpful for each board member to kind of sort of, I think we're all very concerned. And if you could give us an update on what protocols are going to occur for independence, with half of their building being dedicated to special ed students. We often don't speak of them on a regular basis as we do of our other schools. And I just want them to know that the board is very concerned about them as well as all of our other schools. And we recognize that they're a non-traditional school and that things will be different there. And we just want to make sure that we're as informed about independence as we are our other schools, and that, the same level of concern and care is expressed for them as it is for all of our other our other traditional type schools. And then the last thing I just want to say very quickly, again, that I appreciate, but I want to just remind folks that we had a very successful summer program for summer school, and we had a outstandingly successful ELL summer virtual camps. And then I know from one of the schools in my district, Kilby Elementary had an outstanding Century 21 grant summer program as well. So I want to just reiterate to a lot of our parents who are at home watching that Canvas has been successful in multiple ways for multiple types of learners and for teachers already in the summer, and we're seeing continued success. I am not one who ever wishes to repeat my K through 12 education. I think once is enough. But after learning about Canvas, I am excited that, like, if I could go back to school just for that, just that part, not the social part, no teenage stuff, I would, because it is really awesome. And I know it's not going to work for everyone. But I think it's important that if parents have concerns that they reach out to maybe friends and neighbors that they know whose children have participated in some of the summer programs, or staff, so that they can get a little bit more information on what our summer looked like virtually for our students, because we had many kinds of learners who participated with great success. So I just want to take the time, because we haven't had enough time, to say thank you to those who ran every type of summer virtual program that we had, because I think it's really important that our PWCS families know that we have some good data, and we've had some best practices as we go along with our virtual learning, and we will continue to do that. But we've had some really great success stories already. So I just want to say thank you, especially to all of those who ran those programs. And I'm done.
Okay, excellent. I'm going to wrap up. I hadn't asked any questions tonight because this board asked all of the great questions, so I appreciate it. And Dr. Waltz, I want to thank you. The opening remarks truly reassured, I think, many of us, I think, with the public, and then I think as you went through this evening clarifying many things, it was excellent for us. I want to thank the board for calling this special meeting to help clarify and get a better understanding on what we wanted to do with special education. I want to thank Dr. Waltz, his staff, who's been working 24/7, not just on special ed, but the whole reopening. And then every other thing that comes with schools, like making sure we're giving SATs and ACTs and there's so many things that are happening, and there's so many emails flying around by so many people, and we're all trying to do our best. And I want to thank the board for working also 24/7 on, when I open up my email box, whether it's a question about an SAT or it's a question about, safety or all those things, this board is working full-time on that. And I think Ms. Jessie said that earlier, that everyone on this board is working hard to listen and to understand and try to do our best to provide what we believe is going to be a safe opening, an opening like never before. Last, Dr. Waltz, as you pointed out in the opening, and I'll sort of wrap up with a closing because you did it so well, there is no shortage of fear. There is no shortage of paralysis and inertia that has been caused by this pandemic for many of us and all of us at any point in these last few months. What there is a great shortage of, though, is time, resources, and reassurances sometimes. After tonight, I leave this building, and I think much of the public who may have listened will leave with more hope and optimism than we've had in a long time. I do believe very strongly in the efforts you have put through and this staff have done to try to do the best we can to open this school as safely as possible. I'm reassured by your comments this evening that at any moment you think we can't do this, you will come and tell us. This board, just like you guys are afraid not you necessarily, but as we all are looking at this and afraid of, this whole new world we're going into, this board is also afraid. We're no different than the public. We have the same concerns, the parents. We're afraid we're wrong. We're afraid we made the wrong decision. We're afraid that we may put you in a situation that is maybe impossible to work through. Tonight we heard many of the legal reasons for why we have to do what we're doing this year. We're going to do the best we can to be safe, and I am reassured that you all here will keep us up to date and current and advised on safety and security and all the important things we need to do. So I can't thank you enough for tonight, Dr. Waltz. So I really want to give you and your staff a really a big hand for doing what you did. And I know it's a lot to answer. And it's not just the questions that this board will ask in the evening and in public. There are dozens and dozens of questions we send you, and I know that. And I know it. And we appreciate your patience and time and understanding. But you know, as we represent the people, and these are the people's questions as well. So thank you all very much. As seeing that there is no further business for this evening, this meeting will be adjourned. Thank you. Have a great night.